At least I started.
Microphone is on. Very good. Let's just do one more thing here.
Testing captions.
Thank you. We are the Measure S Citizens Oversight Committee, and I am calling this committee to order. May I please get a roll call?
Committee Member Savano.
Here.
Committee Member Moore.
Here.
Committee Member Eskew.
Here.
Committee Member Chair Crump Shears.
Here. Okay. Public comment? And do you have a comment you would like to make, young man? No. Okay. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Not at the moment, Chair Crump Shears. That will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. Now we will start with the agenda, and I can't see that well.
It's the,
Here, if I stand up, because I'm so short. Okay, we've had roll call, public comment. And we move into the regular agenda.
item 4A would be our,
Item 4A.
yeah. Measure S Citizens Oversight Committee background and orientation.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit small. All right, so I'll provide a brief staff report, and by all means, the committee members, feel free to ask any questions. So in way of background, I just wanted to briefly go over the process that we went through to get into the fiscal year. This is last fiscal year. We're talking 23-24, and the last fiscal year that's closed, 23-24. So what happens is we close the fiscal year, and then we wait for the auditors to audit all of our financials, and then once we get our audited financial document and approved by or accepted by the city council, at that point, then we have the final numbers for the year, and then we can come to the committee to discuss what happened, programs and projects under Measure S for that year. So that's kind of how we get here and the timing of the committee meetings. To put together the 23-24 budget, the council every year, they go through a strategic planning process where they talk about, at a high level, the council's goals and their objectives. And in the packet, you will see the fiscal year 23-24 goals and objectives. They're pretty high level, but basically the goals are ensuring long-term vitality of the city, actively working to mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change in accordance with the city council, adopted city council policies, provide core services consistent with best-in-class community service levels, promote community engagement to inform and encourage participation, and then finally, number 5, is promote an equitable, compassionate, and healthy community that honors diversity as a source of strength. Those are the 5 goals. There's a variety of objectives beneath them, and then if you can kind of think of it as a hierarchy below that, or a variety of projects and programs to implement the goals and objectives. And so every year the council reviews the goals and objectives, make sure that that's still in alignment with where they feel the city should be going. And then the staff report out on what we think the projects are. The council, the council then says, well, we think, these are some other priorities we want to work in, and then we discuss about how to best work in those projects or programs and what the relative priority of them should be, because as you all know, there's a limit to resources, both financial and staff time. So when we have this conversation, it's just purely about staff time, because we haven't gotten that far into the budget development yet. So we just talk about programs and priorities based on the available, like how much time it would take to do different things and what we think we have time for. to be able to accomplish that year. And then later in the budget development process, then we actually have year-end actuals from the prior year and revenue projections, expense projections, and then we can start putting numbers to some of the projects and programs. And then that leads to a second iteration on the initial list of projects and programs that we develop, just based on staff resources. And then we overlay the cost, the financial resources. And then at the end of all that, we develop a final budget that gets adopted, and then we move into the year. And as we go through the year, inevitably, despite everyone's best efforts to forecast, what might happen in the year, things always come up. So there's also a process, in the middle of the year, depending on the relative urgency of an item, how to add something to the work plan, and what does that do to the other existing things. So reprioritization conversation. And, and that's how we work through the year. These, the sheets that are in the packet today were it shows you kind of where we ended up, both in terms of the original projects and priorities, and then things that were added after the fact. And it's by department, so the first one you see is the city manager's department. And I'll just say that a lot of the stuff that, that my department works on are a lot of administrative, economic development, sort of higher level that span multiple departments, records, things like that touch on multiple departments. And so that's primarily what the focus was. And then the next one is community development, so that's otherwise what you would otherwise know as planning or building, the building department, also code enforcement. And so they spent a lot of the time working on some plan updates, so Bike and Ped Master Plan, the Santero Way specific plan. They updated that. And also they have also been working on updating digital permit management software, so people can submit for permits without having to physically come into the building to do it. And they're also implementing some processes for automatic review of permits. So computer-based review, essentially. So there's some types of permits, like solar permits, where people can submit it and it's just reviewed automatically and the permit's issued. It's like almost over-the-counter issue. It's immediate, basically. So that's where we see. I mean, that's where things are going. They're going more and more to online service, so that people don't have to physically come in. They can submit permits. They can pay for permits. And get, and do all that remotely, so you don't have to be here during the hours that we're open. It can happen anytime. You can submit a permit on Saturday or Sunday or whenever you want, whenever you're able to, and get it issued efficiently. And as we all hear about AI all the time, but as AI continues to develop, that's going to be more and more a part of sort of an efficiency process that'll be built in. Like the solar thing I mentioned, it's an AI process that reviews it against all the building codes to make sure it conforms, and then it issues the permit without anybody actually checking it, like physically checking it. Other types of permits aren't quite there yet. They still, AI can play a role in initial reviews, but they still need a human review to validate, what those things do. But it's something that we're, over as we go into each year, we're seeing more and more opportunities to just provide efficiency, rather than having to staff up, because there seems like there's always more and more things to do, and so either you add more staff to deal with that, or you come up with better ways to do it. Try to cut out unnecessary steps, come up with better automation, and so we're just based on the reality of of where we are as a city. We're trying to do as much as we can with the people that we have, rather than so. I guess work smarter rather than harder, or something like that, yeah. So anyways, that's what community development, they did a lot of planning updates. The Santero Way specific plan, as I mentioned, was the big one. And then police, we got a new police chief here after Chief Parrish had retired. So, we have Chief Simmons now. And so that transition happened, and there was just, a lot of, I wouldn't say there's a lot of new stuff, but definitely, just kind of going through all the processes, making sure that we're, doing everything, the best way we can. And we're constantly evaluating everything. And this isn't in for this work plan, but we did also form recently a community police advisory committee So that is also started up and it had an initial meeting, and so that's a quarterly meeting thing. So that's,
Good.
that came out of this time period, but it didn't form in this time period. And then admin services, so they are who actually run the city. That's Angela here. But basically, you know, all billing, all payments, budgets, contracts, basically everything that maybe as a public you don't see, but actually makes everything happen. That happens in admin services. And again, I'd say the general theme for them was, like some of the other departments I already mentioned, was to go through all of their processes and make sure that if there's opportunities to, you know, make things more efficient or just work better, automate things, so that's a continuing push for admin services as well. But I think that is it for some of the strategic planning elements. We do have a large part of these pages is the Brown Act, just so it's handy in case you need to reference it for some reason, as well as the ordinance that formed the original Measure G, but then the amended, renamed Measure S, which is the same as the Measure G, but it just got renamed by the council. That outlines the formation and the duties. I think that's it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have anything on that.
I don't have any questions
Yeah.
this year.
No questions.
Okay, thank you.
So then, we'd like to move on to item, I think it's 4B. And I can go ahead and provide, 5A, excuse me, I'm so sorry. This is our presentation on, so good evening, committee members. My name is Angela Corder. I am the Director of Administrative Services. So this evening, I'm going to be presenting to you, as we've done in previous years, the report out of the summary of the use of Measure S funds that's collected and used for the city of Cotati. Next slide, Kevin, thank you. Can you hear it? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry.
From where are you reading?
I'm reading from my notes. I have,
Oh,
Just a slideshow.
yeah.
you
So-
kept looking up, and so I started looking up. And I wanted to see what it was you were looking at.
No,
Okay,
just the slide deck I'm going through in general, just have my notes to make sure there's certain things I maybe don't have specifically in a slide and I want to speak to.
okay.
But in this report, I'm going to be providing a summary of what Measure S is, the details on the funds that were received in the fiscal year 23-24, further detail on how the city utilized those funds towards our strategic objectives, followed by the process for the auditing and financial reporting, and then questions out on the use of funds and our presentation. Next slide, please. So Damien's already kind of gone over this in summary, but what is Measure S? It's really outlined in detail in the report. That's report pages 2 and 3. Sorry, the page numbers didn't show up on the report, but it's also packet pages 86 to 87. You might be looking at this in the future or wanting to refer back, later. So Measure S is a voter-approved 1% sales tax that is dedicated to providing funding for essential city services. This 1% tax was first approved by voters in June of 2014, and it was then called Measure G. Then it was renewed by the voters in essentially the same form, but extending the term to state that it needs to be in effect until repealed by the voters. And that was in effect and voted and approved by the voters in November of 2020, and that was called Measure S at that time. So really, Measure G is the same thing as Measure S, except for that change, so that we secured that funding in perpetuity until the voters say, you know what, we don't want this anymore. Next slide. So for the fiscal year ending, let me take a quick step back. So the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, the total sales tax rate as of that June 30th date in Cotati was 9.5%. The state receives 6% of those taxes. The county transportation fund receives 0.25%. The county has additional individual add-on taxes that voters have approved, and those total 1.25%. And then the city receives 1% for Bradley Burns, and then an additional 1% for Measure S. So that's kind of the breakdown of your tax. So you might see a single line item when you go to the grocery store that just says taxes, but just know this is kind of the breakdown of how that's applied and distributed to different sources. Next slide. So for Measure S, for fiscal year 23-24, so this goes from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, we had total receipts of approximately, and again, I'm so sorry for the typo, it's not 3.2 million, it's only 3 million, where the state then take out their piece of their administrative fees, which were less than 1%, and I'm grateful that they processed this large amount of money for us and follow up on tax receipts, and for this year had only charged us $10,000 for doing all that processing. So while it's not great to send more money in admin fees, they just take it off the top. So out of that, 3 million, they just took 10,000. So on a quarterly basis, these revenues are approximately $768,000 per quarter. We do receive them monthly, however, it's kind of easier to quantify on a quarterly basis and then compare it to the prior year where we had approximately $792,000 per quarter. So you can see that kind of dropped almost $100,000 for the year, $30,000 per quarter. And so while it's not a tremendous amount of money, it is a decrease. That decrease is seen across our sales tax groups, and it really was a change in consumer spending that led to this decrease in sales tax revenues. Previous years, everyone was fixing their houses and buying things locally and things that were tangible goods that were subject to sales tax. And then this year, we're kind of seeing more of a trend towards people purchasing services or wanting to travel, right, and enjoy that, getting away, because we've been kind of stuck here with COVID and everything else too. So it was a really change in how individuals were spending money, and that's how we received tax money in return. And just a quick note, we're seeing that kind of continue into the next year, and we're seeing more kind of economic uncertainty. People tend to save more during those times, and so we're kind of following suit as you're following maybe our budget going forward. You'll see kind of that trend continue. Next slide, please. So we receive in those funds minus a little bit of administration fees from the state. And then we classify those really into the different expenditures. How are we going to spend these funds? And we have two different types. And the main types are, the first of all is the operations and maintenance. So it's ongoing operations of services, staffing, versus the second type, which is improvements, projects, and equipment. The city really tries to balance these use of funds between these two types, so we're not solely reliant on this for continuing operations, but we're strategically using it for capital projects as well. It does help us make sure we have amounts available for matching for grants, and so we want to make sure that is a big piece for our capital projects. Next slide. We also then dissect it in another way, which is the breakdown of expenditures by programs. These programs are classified as public safety, streets, sidewalks, and storm drains, parks and landscape, public buildings, and then recreation. So these also funds, these are all still operations and maintenance or capital projects, but now we kind of break them up into different classifications by program. So for fiscal year 23-24, public safety accounted for just under 23% of funds. Streets were at 38%, parks at 18%, public buildings around 8%, and the recreation, which is fully funded by Measure S, was at 14%. Next slide.
What are you looking at when you look up?
Oh, I'm checking to make sure I'm on the right slide because I'm letting Kevin know to advance the slide. So to make sure I'm not talking about something that's not up there, I want to make sure, yeah, we're on the same page.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Absolutely. Thank you for keeping
It
me
was
in check.
driving me crazy.
I just don't, I tend to keep talking if I don't just make sure I'm on the same thing.
I got it.
Good,
Got it.
okay. So for public safety, that first program type, this is on report page 6. We provide kind of a detail of the different classifications of what those expenditures went to. So for fiscal year, 23-24 was just under $700,000 were spent on public safety. This continued to fund ongoing operations to preserve our local police department. It continued to support the SAFE teams for the crisis response group. They continued to fund the fleet replacement with our electric police vehicles. And we continue to invest in our traffic safety construction programs, which for this year was the solar RRFB at West Sierra and La Plaza. So those are like the flashing light signals, so you know when people are crossing. And then the updating the Lund Hill crosswalk, so the crosswalk right there, to also make it safe and visible for individuals crossing from the park across the street there on Valprice. Next slide. So then for our street, sidewalk, and storm drains, we had approximately 1.1 million spent on this program. They had ongoing improved services, including this operations, which is our civil engineer, and the traffic signal roadway landscape maintenance. So we just have ongoing maintenance and operations that go towards the maintenance of the streetscape that we want to make sure if we're going to fund as a capital program, we also want to fund continued maintenance for it so we don't lose track of that. So that it is funding that piece of it as well. We initiated design for the 2024 street construction improvement project, which was the Redwood Drive. We completed the street construction improvement, this Quick Strike project. We started the design, or continuing the design, excuse me, of the Highway 116 West Cotati Avenue intersection. We've initiated construction on the 2024 street improvement project, which has a full list of different streets, because what we do as a part of our street projects and the improvement projects is we have a list of streets and evaluation of what the ratings are of the streets, and we want to make sure we're keeping a high enough rating for our streets, so we're continuing to maintain the ones to keep them at a higher level, as well as improving other ones that need to be brought up to a better level. So we're strategically looking at those and also trying to group ones together that are in a closer area. Even though Cotati is small, we also don't want to have different projects all throughout the city. So we have to think of them in how do we keep our rating and our maintenance improved, while also not accessing additional funds just to have them in different locations across the city. So we do use a street program to help manage that. We completed design for the sidewalk gap closure project and continued design on the city signage for wayfinding program. Next slide. So for the park and landscape, we had just over $500,000 spent on that program. We had ongoing operations, including the cost of a full-time maintenance worker. We have continued construction completion for the Cotati Park and picnic area. I know it seems like a long time ago, but it was still continuing on in this year, and we hadn't quite completed that construction, so it is included in this. We had ongoing funding for the operations at the Rhonda Fletty Ranch. So the different ranch programs they have over there, we do continue to fund partially through Measure S. We have design improvements for that we were working on as part of our park plan. So we have the Putnam Park, which is under construction now, but it was in design. And then we also continue design with the Sunflower Park and the Civic Center Park. We have continued maintenance for the parks and clearing vegetation programs we use through our public works, so funding those pieces of them. And continuing, we're going to continue to provide the Creek Week cleanups, where we go and support those events in the creeks to help keep them clear of debris. Next slide. So our public building program, we have just over $250,000 spent for our public buildings. We had ongoing operational costs for the buildings, and we have our building official, which provides inspection services, as well as our code enforcement official. We have funded maintenance and repairs for buildings and equipment, as well as replaced the flooring in one of the Civic Center classrooms that was damaged. And so we wanted to make sure we brought that up to repair. We continue to have invested upgrades in the City Hall IT infrastructure. I don't know if you could tell, but we've had some new improvements this year for our AV equipment, but it was definitely advanced with other IT infrastructure that needed to be in place before we could put the AV system into place. So all kind of behind the scenes, but helps us continue to operate safely into the future as we look to, again, utilize more technology here. Next slide. For recreation, which is again fully funded by Measure S and only possible because of Measure S, we were at approximately $420,000 for the year. It funds all the full-time recreation manager and recreation coordinator. It also funds all their seasonal employees, the part-time camp staff to assist with special camps when children are out of school, as well as during the summer. They also facilitate the events we have in the park, so Kids Day, they all facilitate those things. The farmer's market, they attend, the part-time employees, and it gives a great resource for high schoolers, primarily, I believe, the ranch, to come and be a part of the city government and engage with our community. We also fund all services and supplies needed to run over 17 different growing programs and events, including the sold-out Bunny Brunch this weekend. And so we continue to foster all of those programs that they provide. And we're going to continue having expanded support of communications with social networking through Facebook and Instagram. And so they also manage quite a bit of that. Next slide. So once we have those revenues and expenditures, we make sure everything is classified by type as well as by program. We then submit that to the auditors and they evaluate the revenues, making sure they tick and tie to what the state says they gave us and that everything's appropriately accounted for and that the expenditures are classified by those expenditure types. They again do an audit of all the rest of our books and records as well, but they provide a statement on the revenues and uses of Measure S. We still had our auditors, Badawi and Associates, so it was our 5th year with this auditor providing our financial statements that were clean of opinion, so there was no material misstatements, and it was concluded in January 2025 and reported in February to the council. And in the report, I believe it was report page 11, there is the statement from the auditors with the actual statement of Measure S, which is included in our financial statements every year. Next slide. And then I will just turn it back to you for any questions or comments you have on the report. What we would do from this point is get your approval for the expenditures for the letter to be sent to council, and that would be presented to council at the next meeting.
Okay. We need to vote now.
Well,
Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, if you have any questions first.
Oh, first questions,
yeah.
yes. So, are there any questions? Okay.
Came prepared.
Now, tell us what we need to vote on specifically.
There's a letter in the packet. It is,
What page in the packet, please?
yeah, I was looking for that. Do you have it? I'll look for it while Angela gets you the letter.
Oh, 84, 85?
Yeah,
Oh, go back.
right after the stuff.
Oh, okay.
Okay, right, it's packet page 83.
Okay. All righty.
Madam Chair, if I may assist you with that, I'd be happy to make a motion that we accept the report and transmit the letter to the council,
Great.
if that helps you.
That would be great.
I'll make that motion.
All right. All right. On page 81 in our packet,
83, I believe, actually, 83? Yeah.
you have it on yours.
Oh, right, yeah, the recommendation's on 81, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have a motion and you need a-
Yes.
you need a
A
second.
motion to approve and
Yeah.
send.
Okay,
Go ahead.
A motion and a second.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. I think, did we vote?
Would you say your motion?
Oh,
Have we said the motion?
that was what I was doing, sorry. I made the motion for you.
You said it already?
Yeah.
I didn't even hear it.
She seconded it, so all in favor?
I heard a second. Okay. I'm,
Teamwork.
yes, teamwork, yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And no opposition and no, what do you call it when?
Abstentions, yeah.
What?
No abstentions.
Abstentions, yes, thank you.
One absence, yeah,
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 okay.
Nice job, thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you all. Just the chair, yeah, just the chair. Yeah, and if there's no other discussion, then you can adjourn,
Are you serious?
Yeah.
yeah. You're super efficient at this.
No, I'm not. I wish I could take that credit, however. All right. Hearing no further business, we are adjourned.
All right,
Thank you.
All right.
congratulations.
Can we have another meeting next month so that I can get into this more? It's as if I've never chaired a meeting before, and my gosh.
But you do get to sign something. Yeah, you do get to sign something.
Okay.